Alaikum and good morning, everyone. I will be talking about the inclusive education concept. We all know that there are an estimated to 40 million children with disabilities worldwide. Like every other children, they also have their own ambitions and dreams for their future, and they also need quality education to develop their skills and realize their full potential. But what is the reality in current scenario is that they face persistent barriers to education stemming from discrimination, stigma, and the routine failure of decision makers to incorporate disability in school services. Then what is the solution that we can give to them? How we can solve their this persistent discrimination from the mainstream area? The inclusive education is the most effective way to give all children a fair chance to go to school, learn, and develop the skills they need to thrive. Inclusive education means all children in the same classroom and schools. It means real learning opportunities for groups who have traditionally been excluded, not only children with disabilities but speakers of minority languages too. Inclusive education, even though they are focusing on children with disabilities, it does not mean that it is limited to children with disabilities. It also tries to include every other children, whether he is disabled or non-disabled, to the mainstream education where they are facing discrimination based on their color, gender, or caste or languages too. So inclusive education projects education for all, but it should be remembered that education for all does not mean that giving everyone the same education, but it also the inclusive education also responds to the diversity in learners. That is, it also respect the individual difference each learner have from each other. So inclusion is much more than integration. It signifies that the child with disability is provided a similar environment and experiences as his or her non-disabled peers. Let's see what is a definition for inclusive education, and it is given by Barton in 1997. Inclusive education does not simply refer to the placement of children with special needs into normal schools, but it is also concerned with the conditions under which we can educate effectively all children. So it is not about just placing a children with disability in a normal school and all else completed, but it is about how we are providing the necessities that each children need, whether they are disabled and non-disabled. So inclusive education concept differ from the integration concept which was here a way before inclusive education. Inclusive education is a more recent concept, and integration meant or demanded that additional arrangements will be made to accommodate children with disabilities within a system of schooling that remains largely unchanged. That is, in integration, the children with disabilities were placed in normal schools, but the responsibility to cope up with this normal school environment was in the hands of or at the shoulders of this children with disability and his or her family. And school does not try to help these non-disabled children in any special way other than just treating them as normal children. But inclusive education is different. They restructure the school's policy and structure to accommodate a child with disability. Inclusive education does not simply mean putting them into the normal schools, but also providing them with the necessary provisions that they actually require, as in the words of Barton 1997. So there are some ground values of inclusion in schools. These values define whether the school is inclusive or not. The child with disability does not have to always try to achieve normal standards. Even though they are studying in a normal school environment and in normal school, it does not mean that they need to have a similar achievement level as the normal children. There also has to be no minimum criteria of ability for seeking admission to an inclusive school. Schools follows a policy of zero rejection. There is no need for any minimum quality or minimum criteria of ability for seeking admission to such schools. That is, everyone gets equal opportunities, every student gets equal opportunities in an inclusive school. And it also celebrates diversity in a pluralistic society. The non-disabled children have much to learn from children with disabilities and vice versa. And it all actors of inclusive education must collaborate and cooperate with each other to give best result of inclusion. Inclusive education does not mean that it is the non-disabled children is always superior to disabled children, but these disabled children also have some qualities that non-disabled children does not have, some excellence than these non-disabled children. But and inclusive education is all about cooperation between these two categories of children, where they help each other in respective manner. And inclusive education, even though it means education for all, it at the same time they respect that each individual has his or her own uniqueness and try to provide for this for such uniqueness. Individual differences are there, and inclusion does not uh, give a blind eye towards these individual differences. They also consider this individual difference and at the same time giving equal opportunities for the all. So inclusive education in simple words is that the school places the teaching or learning inclusion in schools places the teaching or learning responsibility on the schools rather than on the child with a disability. So it is the schools that need to come towards the children with disability, not children with disability needed to go and accommodate to the schools that is already existing here. So this is the simple definition and concept of inclusive education in schools. These are my references. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Have a nice day.